I'm Adam Meyer of Mill City Lutheran in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And in this video, we've got this cherry red Gibson ES 335. I believe this to be a 1964 based on the color, the block inlays, the short pick guard, so on, the serial number, that all kind of brings it in around that 1964 mark. It's in for not its first refret. It's been refretted before, but it also needs the bridge replaced because it's sagging pretty bad. The hardware on this is definitely more aged than previous videos I've done, like Les Paul and the other 335 and stuff. So I'll be going through and aging the bridge that I replaced on this more than I have other times, just to kind of blend with the pickup covers and the tailpiece. So let's get this taken apart and start investigating. Now, while I have the original strings on, instead of wasting a set of strings, I'm going to evaluate the neck before we get into checking out what's going on with the electronics. I'm going to take notch straight edge so I can check the fingerboard level and my relief gauge. So checking with both the truss rod all the way tight and all the way loose. Got a very slight back bow when it's all the way tight. Now when I let it out all the way, and if I were using, I'm actually going to check this off camera correctly, there's now a little bit of gap between the notch straight edge and the fingerboard in the middle. Also checking with relief gauge, when it's all the way tight, it's at 0, straight. All the way loose, we got 10 thousandths forward bow. It's not ideal, but it's close enough that I don't need to level this fingerboard. I'm going to be putting on taller frets, so I'll be able to do a fret truss where I've got the truss rod pretty much most of the way tight, and then once we're actually setting it up, you'll be releasing that to get right in the middle of the rod adjustment, and that'll be at that 5 thousandths relief, which is just like ideal kind of medium-low action. So everything's going well with this. Customer didn't want me going in depth leveling the fingerboard. Like, if it can be avoided, avoid it, and I will on this. So let's keep moving forward. We're not going to be doing an overall fingerboard leveling, but if you check out some of these fret ends here, these look like they may have actually gotten mashed into the binding a little bit. So when we get these off, if there's kind of an indentation or whatever, I'm going to repair the binding a little bit before we put new frets on. And that'll require me doing just a very light skim across the top of the fretboard. Now that we have the frets off, take a look here. I try and keep this in focus. The tang was trimmed back, but on the bottom of the bead, you see that there, that wasn't filed flush. We got a little bit left there, and that was pressing into the binding. That's why the fret ends were looking a little rough. Take a close look here at what's going on underneath those frets. Really, it's much less than I was expecting here. This I should be able to just simply sand out. We haven't pressed into the plastic that much. Usually I'll just go over the fingerboard with some steel wool, just get the remaining glue off here. All this here, that's some super glue. But I'm going to use one of my sanding blocks and just skim, and that should be enough to give this a cleaner edge so that the frets will sit nice on here. The issue was that when you cut the tang off the fret, you're supposed to file the underside of the bead, and that wasn't done quite well enough on some of these. But I'll be taking care of that. So this is ended up being a little more minor than what I first thought. Also keep in mind, I'm not doing a full leveling on this fingerboard, just cleaning it up, just kind of skimming here. These inlays are, they're plastic, so they've sunken in, and the wood is kind of worn away between the frets, so just lightly skimming this board. I have the neck adjusted so that it's level as it lays here on my bench, and like I said, I'm just taking a sanding block and just skimming this. Now I can already see in some spots that I've gained back a nice little flat spot on the binding for the bead to rest on. I'll follow through with higher grits on this, and if need be, when this is done, I'll do a little trick to kind of age the wood. Here's the after, and as you can see, not completely gone, but I'm going to follow through with fretting this, and once the fret ends are beveled, if there is an issue, I can still try and melt a little plastic and get it into any gaps, but this looks like it's going to look perfectly normal when everything's done. So this has definitely been refretted before, so I know the fret slots are deep enough. I can just stick my little claw down in there and it goes in quite a ways. But I still need to clean out any glue from the previous work being done. So I'm just going to kind of go in and crack it loose. There's a little bit of a dust that comes out. And also something to keep in mind, since there's binding on this, you always want to pull towards the center. I'm going to go through all these all the way up the treble side, flip the guitar around, and then go from the bass side towards the center again. It's just so you make sure that you don't yank on the binding and pull it loose or cut a notch into it. So it's just keep following through like this. So once I've trimmed back the tang, there's still a little bit, you can see there on the bottom of the bead. Need to file that off, otherwise that's going to press into the binding, or you see a little bit of a gap caused by that. So I'm just going to put in my fret holder here, whatever file works for you. I just want to get that little bit off. Get a flat surface there. It really doesn't take much at all. You can see that. Now that'll rest on the binding real nice and even. This particular guitar, I am going to fret without glue and then go back and glue later. Just kind of a judgment call on this one. You do enough of these, you kind of get a kind of a comfort zone with each method. With bound fingerboards, I typically will run just a little bit of medium super glue inside the fret slot and then press the fret in, and usually I can get it where it's just the right amount of glue. I don't have a lot of cleanup on the fingerboard after. On this one, since the frets are going in real nice, It's been refretted before. It's possible that the rosewood isn't going to hold the fret down in place well enough, so I don't want to put glue in there, pound the fret in, have the glue set up, but the fret hasn't gotten all the way down yet. Or there's like one end of the fret slot is a little bit loose. Sometimes you can hold that fret down, bleed some glue in from the side, and that will help hold it down. So that's the reason for choosing this method on this guitar. Just make sure I got a little bit of an extra bend on the ends, but not so much that I'm going to end up damaging the binding. There we go. Nice and flush. Got to double check every time. And I'll just get this clipped off. Make sure I didn't pull anything loose. That's looking real good. So later on I'll come back and glue all of them once they are pressed into place. So the guitar is not finished yet. It's kind of set up. I have the nut slotted correctly. The truss rod is set correctly. The saddle height is correct, but the saddles are not slotted. What I want to do is double check the intonation before I slot the saddles, because with these ABR1 type bridges, you can flip the saddle around because it's got a slope on it, and you might need to do that to get the intonation correct. So without the slot, the intonation isn't going to be quite as accurate as if the saddle was slotted, but you at least can tell, because you can end up with a saddle backed up all the way and it's sloping that way, and it's just not quite intonated right. If you flip it around so it's flipped going that way, and it just gets there. But the issue, you don't always slot the saddle right in the center. Gibson is pretty notorious for having their saddles or their bridges placed off center, so you can end up with your string off center in the saddle. If you slot the saddle first, check the intonation later, and need to flip that saddle around, you can end up shifting your string to one side or the other, then having a really awkward string spacing. So that's why I'm doing this double check before I do my work. Once I'm done with it, I'll go back, double check all the intonation again, and then I'm done with the setup. So this is what I'm talking about here. I line the strings up with the neck when I slot the saddles. You notice we end up being a little off center with these, especially the treble side. So had I slotted first, checked intonation later, and I end up with a problem with needing to flip the saddle around, the string spacing would have been all out of kilter. And keep in mind, Gibson also, they have their pickup a little off center here. If your string is, still over the pole piece, it's going to be fine. You won't notice a change in volume. Had I brought the string to center like the bass side, if I can hold that with my finger, you notice just how far in that E string would be then. And there you have it. Another job done well. 1964 ES335. It's a cherry, really nice looking guitar. Wasn't anything too scary about this. Otherwise, pretty straightforward with the refret. Just cleaning up the bead of the fret and making sure we've got a nice clean edge for the binding of the binding for that fret to rest on, so that we have nice clean visible lines there instead of little jagged edges under the frets before. New nut, new bridge. Just a reminder, any of you with the older guitars out there, replacing the bridge like a tune-o-matic bridge, that really does nothing to the value of your guitar. Don't play on a guitar that plays poorly just for the sake of having old parts on it. You can replace the tuners with exact replicas and it'll hold tune better. Same with the bridge, it'll set up a lot better, it'll be in tune better. So you just hang on to those parts, put them in a bag, keep them in the case. Don't ever lose those, because you want to keep them. They just swap right out. It's no problem. So very cheap upgrade that makes a tremendous difference on how well the guitar plays. So, any questions about this guitar or any of the other projects in my video library, you can always just leave a comment or contact me directly. Just check out the About section of my channel for that information, and we'll see you next time.